thank you, Linda, for being here, because your research for the past, I don't know, 10, 20 years has fit right into what this whole summit's about, the culmination of your work, tracing interplanetary existence and souls. And let me just read a little bio, because you're a licensed psychologist and regression therapist. A lot of people want to know, after they listen to these seminars, who can they go to regress them, and you are the perfect person. You're a research author, hypnotherapist, and you do like past lives, but also planetary lives, which is really the bulk of what you hopefully you'll speak here today. Private practice for over 40 years and guided thousands of clients to past lives, parallel lives, helping them understand the challenges their soul has come in with from lifetime to lifetime. Linda's training courses on past life in between. She also gives training courses on how to do regressions on past life and parallel lives and interdimensional lives. And she's convinced healing has its impact on the evolution of humanity and the unity of all people. She has made the understanding of soul her priority. Linda studied with and co-taught with Dr. Michael Newton. She's also a frequent guest on radio shows like Coast to Coast with George Noory, and she's a featured reincarnation expert on the Dr. Oz program. I didn't know that. That's great. She conducts workshops all over the US, and now she's doing it on Zoom, and it always deepens her understanding of human evolution, consciousness, and this ongoing study of regressions to parallel interdimensional interplanetary lives. And her website, the Raven Heart Center in Boulder, she's been there since 1997. And her deep focus is on universal understanding and awareness of soul evolution. So also you're the author of Your Soul to Light, Evolving Soul, The Souls on Earth. And I'm so happy you're here today, because your background, your studies gives a foundation to everything we're talking about today. So thanks, Linda. And
totally my pleasure. Let me pop up share screen and I'll dive in, because I know that time is of the essence.
It's always of the essence. Thanks for being here. Just go ahead. So it's all yours.
Okay, it's great to be here and an honor to, I've been listening off and on all late morning and afternoon, and what great, incredible wisdom. So, okay, let me dive in, and let me make smaller so I don't have pictures covering my screen. I'm going to talk about Starseed Incarnation on Earth. And I thought it might be useful for me to just give a quick synopsis of how did I get into this? Because I don't know if this is true, but maybe we all started out as conventional people, or thought we were conventional people, but very, very long story made short, which I think often helps to understand how did I get into regression. So I've been in private practice over 40 years. I was once a conventional psychologist doing what you think conventional psychologists do. And in 1993, from a human standpoint, I experienced the sad and unfortunate passing of a dear colleague of mine. And back in 1993, I was approximately in my middle 40s. And I didn't know anything about, well, I certainly didn't know anything about this incredible wisdom we've been listening to all day today. I didn't understand reincarnation. I didn't understand the soul. What happened in 93 is that when my colleague passed, he began to talk to me from the other side, which I thought was really super weird, but I also thought it was really amazingly fascinating. I said to my husband, who was then a professor of political science, we'd never talked about spirituality. And I said to him, well, I'm sensing my dear friend, he knew my friend, talking to me from the other side. And I said to my husband, and oh my gosh, I really think, and I thought my husband would think I had lost my mind. I said, he's showing me scenes of past lives. In my mind's eye, I'm experiencing what you might call clairvoyance of scenes of past lives in my mind's eye. And my husband looked back at me extremely, calmly. And I said, "You don't think this is weird, do you?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Really? Why not?" And here's what he said. And, we'd been married for 25 years. We're one of these crazy couples that's been married for a very, very long time, going on 55 years. And my husband, whose first name is Earl said, "Well, I guess I've repressed something that occurred to me as a child." And what he said was, "When I was a boy about age 10, I remembered my past lives in detail. When I was by myself in my own private time and space, I began to know things about who I'd been before. I believed it. I don't know why I believed it, but I repressed it because I thought, excuse me, I thought no one would believe me." That's how I got into this work. And then, of course, it expanded to the point of what I do today. So let me go farther. Okay. So what is soul regression? I just want all of you to comprehend the primary resource for me of information that I believe is true is client by client by client by client, a little bit of channeled validation from a couple of capable channels, but primarily about 28 years of guiding past life regression and soul level regression. And that's where this knowledge comes from of listening to my clients. If for those of you that understand regression, I don't give the information to the client, they give me the information. So it's like, how many people started talking to me about souls from elsewhere? How many people began to talk about their challenges that come from their soul's home base? And these are things I want to talk about today. And, we listened to Marina today with this awesome explanation of Earth's culture. And I'm not sure that I have heard as much detail as Marina shared from a teacher, from a speaker. So here's my understanding of what happened on Earth. And I want to focus this on, why are we here? What are the gifts that people bring? What are the challenges that people bring that they're dealing with, especially when they're not from here? So Earth began to have intelligent life somewhere between about 30 to 50,000 years ago. What we believe to be true is that the major locations of cultural development on Earth are Egypt, what we once called Mesopotamia, or essentially where Iraq and Iran come together, and the Indus River Valley, where northern India and Pakistan come together. Yes, there was incarnation, most people believe, early on in the continent of Africa, but that was, you might say, pre-cultural, okay? The souls that originally came to Earth, and again, here's what I've learned from client to client. There was a large soul group. Many people would call this the 144,000 souls that's talked about in both the Old and New Testament. This was a soul group that I've been guided to call the Melchizedek soul group. And language, as I was listening to Mark, I was flashing on understanding to some degree Aramaic and Hebrew, where these languages in many ways come from the stars. So this expanded soul group, this conglomerate soul group of about 150,000 souls, came from somewhere else in the universe, agreed to come to Earth to begin to expand humanity. And I'm going to differentiate the difference between souls that primarily incarnate on Earth, souls that primarily, we're calling them starseeds, I often call them interplanetary, and angelic souls. So to boil this down, so that it's sort of palpable and easy to comprehend, why do we come here? Why do we come into body on Earth? We come into body on Earth essentially to expand humanity. We agreed to come to Earth, whether we're a soul that usually incarnates on Earth, or we're a soul that is a starseed or interplanetary. We agreed to come here because humanity has yet to figure out how to operate in a healthy fashion. My understanding is that the only way that humanity evolves is through our own actions and through our not just holding, you might say, right-brained, high-frequency love and compassion, but coupling that with action, with evolved behavior, with you might say non-self-based behavior, so that right-brained love and compassion is essential, but is not sufficient. So this Melchizedek soul group primarily are souls that came from somewhere else in the universe and began incarnating on Earth and began to incarnate almost exclusively on Earth. So here's where I'm subdividing, basically subdividing those of us who usually incarnate on Earth from those of us who don't usually incarnate on Earth. And I thought I'd bring in, as I listened to various wonderful speakers and teachers today, I thought I'd bring in quickly the notion of split incarnation. So split incarnation, if we focus it on Earth, and you can see I can't talk without my hands, it means my higher self, my soul, just as an example, agrees to incarnate. I come in, let's just say, as Linda into my body. I bring a fractal, a holographic fractal of my soul energy that causes me to live and breathe when I'm born. And at times our souls come into 2 bodies, 3 bodies. And right now I'm talking about on Earth. Why? To advance humanity. Okay. So again, just to make this so we can wrap our mind and our thoughts around it. Essentially, and I'm trying to pay attention to chat too, because I want to get to the point of doing Q&A, because I think Q&A really helps fill all of you up with what you're seeking. Okay, here's my understanding of souls on Earth and souls in the universe as we know it. Because when we talk about, and Mark spoke about this, others have spoken about it today, the universe in many ways is hard for us to wrap our mind around, the expansive nature of the universe. If you're an Earth-based soul, that means, all that simply means is that primarily your soul was designed to incarnate in the human body on Earth, to evolve as an individual soul. And as you evolve to higher levels of evolution and of wisdom and expansion, then you're capable of assisting humanity to evolve. You're not just working on your own soul's evolution. You're not just, we might say, cleaning up your own karma. On Earth, we have free will. So it's the one place that, as I understand it, in the universe where we have free will. We can go against our pre-birth plan. We can decide not to follow our pre-birth plan. As I often say to clients in my work, we can go off script. We often, everybody, if you think about your own life, your family life, you probably know people, family and other than family, where you might say, I mean, they weren't if we put words to it, they weren't the most healthy people in the world in terms of behavior. we have the capability of going off script. When we go off script, for the most part, we're allowed to come back and keep cleaning up the off script activities or karma. So when we think about, my understanding is there are basically 3 types of souls that come to Earth. Earth-based souls, souls that normally come here most of the time. Interplanetary souls, now that's my term. I think it's a synonymous term with starseed. And you know how it is in the spiritual framework. We often have people using 2 different terms that mean the same thing. So I was given through regression the term interplanetary. What does that mean? It means a soul that was primarily created to incarnate. Let me say this differently so it's clear and it's valid. It's a soul that was primarily created to operate other than on Earth. Some interplanetary souls have past lives. Some interplanetary souls do not have past lives. They reside at their soul's home base, and that's where they are. As I started guiding regression, I've been guiding regression about 27, 28 years. Somewhere in the range of about 20 years ago, I started noticing in my regression practice, and for the most part, for about 27, 28 years, except for, I take some vacations here and there, but I've been guiding more than one regression per week most of the time. And so I started noticing 18 to 20 years ago that my client practice was becoming about 50% people / incarnate souls / clients who were discovering past lives not on Earth. Now, I'd hazard to say that everybody listening today understands that. But are we the norm? Those of us that understand the term starseed, know there's more than just this life, this body. No, we're not the norm. So I began to have about 50 to 60% of my client population that were discovering where they come from, why they have certain gifts, why they have certain challenges, why they're here now. And then maybe 10 to 12 years ago, I started working with more and more angelic souls. It's my understanding, and I realize we're sort of compartmentalizing 3 types of souls. It's my understanding that on Earth, we have, relatively speaking, we have 3 types of souls, soul origin. Earth-based souls, I happen to be an Earth-based soul. I've had a few lives not on Earth, but primarily I've been coming to Earth, I'm fairly sure, for a very long time. Some of us come from somewhere else in the universe, most of the time within the solar system that contains Earth, occasionally from outside our solar system, even less common from outside our galaxy. Then, which is not the topic of today and tomorrow's conference, so I won't say a whole lot, but, and I keep saying it's my understanding because I'm saying this because it's coming from clients. I began then discovering and working with angelic soul clients. Earth-based souls are somewhat different from interplanetary souls, are somewhat different from angelic souls. So let me focus, because that's the point, on interplanetary souls. Hang on. Okay. So the human population of Earth, the human population of experienced souls, I'm talking about more evolved than not, or souls that are evolved approximately on a 10-point scale. They're 7s or 8s and above. I think the reason all of us probably listening today feel like or know we're different is because we're in this little tiny 5% of the human population. About 3% are Earth-based souls. About 1% are interplanetary or starseed souls. And about 1% are angelic realm souls. So if you're, I'm going to use the acronym IP for interplanetary. And as you all can probably tell, I'm a therapist at heart. I'm a psychotherapist at my core. And my whole approach to the work that I do is how to help people understand who they are, why they are, what they're doing here, what their purpose is, why they decided to come here. My guides are just talking to me in my head. And so I'm just going to add in one quick comment. And that is because for some reason they want me to just insert here. Yes, I do believe that walk-ins happen. And my understanding is that more often than not, a walk-in is usually an interplanetary soul taking the place or animating the body that was previously animated by an experienced Earth-based soul. So just for some reason, they wanted me to stick that in there. So let's focus on interplanetary souls. Why do IP souls come here? The only reason, this is what has come through for many, many years, the only reason that IPs come to Earth is because IPs are coming from advanced cultures and Earth is massively struggling with evolution, and IPs bring their advanced wisdom here because we need it. What's, I think, terribly important is for each of us to understand, relatively speaking, why are we here? Why did I come into body? You know, why did Alan come into body? What's the purpose of Sheila's life? What's the purpose of Mark's life? What were the intentions that we brought to be here now? Because I would hazard to say, what I've listened to today already is utterly fascinating, deep, and powerful wisdom. But what I experience with interplanetary souls is that often IP souls struggle mightily to be here. And I'll talk about what I experience with clients with IP souls, what their issues are, what their gifts are, what their challenges are. But I just would encourage everybody to be thinking about, what are your passions? What do you sense as your purpose in your current body, in your current life? Why are you here? And what often happens is, because we live in such an ego-based culture, is so many people will say, well, I'm not, I'm not doing what Alan does, who helps so many IPs and has this amazing new realities program, and I'm not doing what this person does or that person does. What you need to be doing is what you're passionate about. And if you're passionate about being a parent, if you're passionate about being a third grade teacher, great. If you're passionate about helping your elderly neighbor who's ill, fabulous. If you're passionate about writing, teaching, whatever it might be, you could be passionate as an engineer. You could be passionate as a legal secretary. It doesn't matter. That's part of why you're here. So IP soul evolution on Earth always brings a certain amount of karma. To my understanding, there are no souls, there aren't any souls that come into body that have no karmic balancing left to do. If we think about current day Western religion, we think about the notion of something's perfect. The soul is perfect. Even we might say the divine, the source is perfect. And I think, in my personal opinion, we need to throw that notion of perfection sort of out the window and know that each of us as a soul and the evolution of the universe is growing step by step by step. Another reason that IP souls come to Earth is to prepare souls from their own home base. I'll talk in a minute about Interplanetary Home Base, to prepare other advanced experienced souls, IP souls, to come into body. Okay. All right. All right. What is an interplanetary home base? What does that mean? Again, what I've learned is each starseed, each IP comes from a unique culture. And each interplanetary culture is different. For some, the notion of their home and the style of the way of life at their home is pretty much pure right brain, pure love, pure intuition, pure compassion, pure emotion, pure creativity, all these right brain capabilities. For others, it's left brained. It's pure science, pure technology, pure math, pure engineering, pure logic. And then there are also IP home bases that are emerging, that they merge right brain and left brain. It's all good. It's all purposeful. Again, Starseeds IPs come from healthy cultures. But for many IP souls coming into body on Earth, you've not been in the human body many times. And that leads to certain, I hate to use the word struggles, but that's probably what happens, is there are challenges, difficulties, hard to be in these bodies. Okay, so let's talk about skills, gifts, and challenges. Okay. Yeah, and I'll come back to that previous slide in a minute. Okay. So interplanetary souls have all kinds of highly unique gifts. Sometimes they're very misunderstood gifts. They're gifts that it's like, well, why is he or she always focused on writing music or technology at age 12? And so unique gifts would be climate. Actually, I'm flashing on, I'll share this briefly. I'm flashing on a recent client, a man born and raised in South America, born and raised in a very, very poor family. And from the time, almost as far back as he can remember, he cared about the trees, the amount of rain, what was growing in the forests and the areas of nature around him, and it fascinated him. No one understood why he was into that. Today, this man has a PhD in, with some fancy terminology, which I can't remember, is a PhD in the science of forests and the needs of sustaining forests and water. He's an interplanetary soul. He consults all over the world. He struggles with, now I'm flipping to the, what are the challenges? He struggles with humid weather. And he actually lives somewhere where there's pretty significant humid weather. He struggles with humid weather and ends up, if he spends too much time where it's terribly humid, he gets a rash all over his body from head to toe. When we did his regression, we came to understand who he is as a soul, where he comes from as a soul, and what this humidity issue is all about. So other challenges, just as examples: learning difficulties, chemical sensitivities, autoimmune disorders, allergies, digestive issues, and being diagnosed on the autistic spectrum. And I'm talking about obviously adults and children. Marina was talking about indigo, crystal, and rainbow children. And yes, they fit this category. And I do some work with older children, with children at least 13 and above. I work most of the time with adults. And so we're talking about adults who have struggled with 3 autoimmune disorders for 12 years. And it's finally explained because we discover they're an interplanetary soul. Or someone whose diet is so incredibly narrow because they can only eat, 10 different things. Oftentimes, those are interplanetary souls. Let me say a little bit about Interplanetary Home Base and the body, the way of life of IP souls. So, as probably all of you that would be interested in today and tomorrow, IP souls come from planets, star systems, and interdimensional space. Sometimes there's density where an IP soul comes from, the soul's home base, and sometimes there's complete lack of density. So, I feel like as I've listened to the presenters, and obviously I can't ask all of you as listeners, that you have a sense that IP souls at their home base sometimes have dense bodies with unusually shaped heads, elongated bodies, elongated arms, lizard-like skin. Many IP souls don't communicate verbally. Many IP souls don't have families. There may not be romantic relationship. There may not be procreation as we know it. And for me, again, the therapist in me is working with clients who don't understand why no one gets them, why they have the physical problems they do, why they have the emotional issues they do, why they have the gifts that they do, and what that's all about. I thought I'd just mention a highly unique client that I've worked with a number of times. That is, I think I learned about a new home base from this particular client. So being very cautious about confidentiality, this is a woman, 40s, early 50s maybe. She's a medical doctor. She is into major research of very challenging medical conditions, and she works at one of the more respected medical research facilities in the United States. For years, she didn't understand. She also has dietary problems, but I'll leave that out. You see this cute little teddy bear on this slide. She had this, I'm not just going to say propensity, I'll say she had this incredible need to have periods of time where she would, in a clandestine way, she needed to be a child. She needed to eat like a child, eating the kind of things that kids love, like ice cream and, a little bit of candy and pizza. And, she needed to eat more of a, mac and cheese, things that kids eat. And she needed a lot of stuffed animals. She needed to be childlike. Then she'd return back to her medical research job and be this upstanding medical doctor. She thought there was something wrong with her until we discovered that she comes from somewhere in the universe where the souls never grow up. They remain children forever. Healthy, normal, fun-loving, the kinds of healthy things you think of for children. So I thought I would share that. Atlantis. Maybe most of you know this. Atlantis was populated by Earth-based souls and interplanetary souls. What I understand happened that caused Atlantis to basically explode and no longer exist, relatively speaking. We know there are souls that still incarnate on the earth that lived in the Atlantean culture. Is that the Atlantean culture, the interplanetary focus coming from many of the incarnate IP souls on Atlantis became so technology based. The nuclear reactor was the major scientific focus, and human relationship, concern for others, concern for relating to others, went by the wayside. And that's my understanding from working with clients who lived during the time of Atlantis. Okay. Let me add something else in, and I want to get to the point too, in maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes to take questions, because I think that's just crucial to let you all ask questions. So I'll go back and take a look at the chat and do my best. Here's another example of what can happen in Earth incarnation for IP souls. So interplanetary souls can have interplanetary past lives. Lives that happen somewhere else in the universe between two souls that are interplanetary. And there can be significant karma that was unresolved in that past life. Now, let me just add in, because I think this is an important piece. Souls, especially Earth-based souls and interplanetary souls, have what we would call a soul pod or a soul group. So Earth-based souls begin their incarnation belonging to a soul group of about 10 to 20 souls with whom they have the most lives. Interplanetary souls also begin their interplanetary experience before they come to Earth, if they come to Earth. And interplanetary souls have very small soul pods, usually 3 to 5 or 6 souls. But if you're an interplanetary soul, there are a small number of souls with whom you've likely had past lives that you've known since the inception or the creation of your soul. Interplanetary souls can have past lives that are IP past lives, not Earth past lives. And then that past life karma can be brought into an Earth life with 2 interplanetary souls who both agreed to come to Earth, and yet then meet. Sometimes they're family members, sometimes they're friends, and they struggle with current life karma on Earth with a soul that's also obviously on Earth, but they are bringing in past life IP challenges. Okay. I'm going to add in one more piece, and then I think going to questions might be a good place to go. There's so many things I could say. Let me go back again, because I hear my guides just asking me to say one more quick thing. Yeah, I'm trying to think for a minute so I can give this a little bit of clarity. So I want all of you to think about the notion of split incarnation. Why? Because I suspect that anybody listening to as advanced a program as you're listening to today and tomorrow, that the bulk of all the people giving talks, as well as the people listening, and maybe the people that will listen later on, if you can access this recorded and archived, is that you are advanced Earth-based souls, you're advanced IP souls, and you also might be an angelic soul. If you're EB or advanced or Earth-based, and everybody, a lot of people misunderstand. They think I'm saying earthbound. That's a different term. Earth-based just means you normally incarnate here. If you're Earth-based or you're IP, it is highly likely that you have a split incarnation. And I'm talking about another soul, another fractal, holographic fractal of your higher self that is in body as someone else on Earth. Okay? And I can give examples. I think I'll leave that out for right now. But that is how the higher realm and spiritual guides are working hard to push humanity's evolution. Okay. All right. Let me. I have another slide or two, but let me go back. I'm looking back at the chat group, and so okay. So Anastasia, you're saying, what does it mean that people may have existed in Africa thousands of years ago, but were pre-cultural? Yeah. What I'm saying is that there was intelligent incarnation in Africa early on. You know, there's in Joburg in South Africa, there is a museum dedicated to the beginning of upright biped beings. But that's before there were developed cultures. That was not a time of cultural development.
Could
So
it be, Linda, that they were all sort of living in paradise and didn't need culture because, you know, there's an abundance of everything and they were at a level of more of a cosmic consciousness in a sense?
I think that's possible. My hunch, Alan, is that as incarnation began on our planet, beings had to evolve. Sort of Neanderthal beings had to evolve to the point they had to figure out the basics of how do they find shelter, how do they find food, how do they, you know, make their own tools, and they hadn't reached the point that they were advanced enough to begin to create cultural development.
Right. And I'm just saying maybe they didn't need to, but because they were already had everything they needed, but I don't know. Well,
yeah.
But Kevin has a question there. Do you see that?
I do.
Can you identify?
Yeah. Can you identify with your soul source without a regression? Great question, Kevin. Absolutely, the answer is yes. Any kind of intuitive practice, whatever your spiritual intuitive practice might be, as well as dreams. I think there are many people that have connected with who they are as a soul and with their spiritual guides. And in a second, Kevin, let me say a couple things about spiritual guides, because that comes through in regression, most all regressions. But the answer, Kevin, is yes. Trust your intuition, strengthen your intuitive capability, focus on, this is a couple of tips, focus on what are your intuitive strengths, because we're all different. Some of us are visual, some of us are emotion-based, some of us are body sensation centered with emotion, and some of us are cognitive with our intuition. And it can be a blend, but like I had to learn that my cognition, because I tend to lead with my left brain, my cognition was one of the ways my guides talked to me in my head. Yeah. Well, let me just add in one quick thing. Spiritual guides. It's my understanding, none of us, when we're in body on Earth, and including at the soul level, are without at least a spiritual guide. For Earth-based souls generally have more than one, let me say it this way. Earth-based souls usually have a team of guides. Your spiritual guides are always somewhat more advanced than you. But in contrast to that, interplanetary souls sometimes get confused or struggle to connect with the spiritual guide. And it's because interplanetary souls that come to Earth, again, starseeds, say it with that terminology, starseeds that come to Earth are always highly evolved. That's why you come to Earth. For an interplanetary starseed, combine those two, for an interplanetary starseed soul, your guide may be your own higher self. And that may have created confusion for you. You may be seeking to feel like you're connecting with a separate soul when you're connecting with your own soul. So I hope that helps.
Under Q&A, if you go to Q&A, Eric has a question. Is it possible to go off script in a positive way and improve the plan on the fly once you know what you're dealing with down here?
I mean, I can give a simple answer is yes. And that's what I call an addendum. That often means you came into body with a pre-birth plan. For the most part, you satisfied your original pre-birth plan and you're not ready to leave the planet. And so I call that an addendum. Yes, you can expand your pre-birth plan, and it often happens, but I would hazard to say only for an experienced soul, what we might call a 7 and above, a 7 to a 10 in terms of soul evolution. Yeah.
I have a question, Linda.
Okay.
We talk about incarnating in different places, different planets, and some people never incarnated Earth. And I love the fact that some people only have one incarnation. It's ongoing forever, which is really the essence of the soul. But why? I mean, because all souls were created from the same source. Why do some souls choose Earth or not Earth or other? I mean, I think the purpose of incarnation is to learn a level of experience. So why do some souls choose different experiences? I guess I'm asking.
Yeah. Okay. So again, what I understand is that an Earth-based soul is created to primarily incarnate on Earth. It's almost like there are some qualitative differences, you know, no better, no worse, but there are qualitative differences between an Earth-based soul, an interplanetary soul, and it's not the focus of this talk, but I teach a lot about angelic souls as well that come to Earth. But I think what pertains more, Alan, to your question is, for what reason does an Earth-based soul choose to have an interplanetary past life? And for what reason does an interplanetary soul choose to have an Earth life? And I would say that if we boil it down, it's for the sake of evolution of that soul, and it's for the sake of evolution of the culture where they're incarnating. So if an IP soul comes to Earth, they're agreeing to come to Earth. And I mean, I can tell you, I've worked with a lot of clients where they were, the IP soul clients, where they were pretty significantly hesitant to come and deal with the human culture, because unfortunately, we have a lot of, you know, I'll just use the word dysfunction in the human culture, but that's why we're here. Yeah.
Right. Could it have to do with the levels of pre-incarnation when we've created planets and solar systems and we have an affinity towards maybe our own particular creative world as part of a source spirit, if you know what I mean?
Oh, yes, I think that's true. And I think it has something to do with comfort level.
Yeah.
You know, where are we comfortable? But it also, I mean, I know from lots and lots of people that some IP souls come to Earth pretty like, okay, fine, I need to do that, I'll go do that, so to speak. But other times it's like, that's pretty challenging. I've been there before. It's not an easy culture to operate in. Now,
Right.
many IP cultures, and people might say, well, from where do most IP souls come? The answer is that's almost impossible to answer, because they come from so many different locations. We don't have, just primarily Pleiadian and Arcturian and souls from Orion's belt. We have souls on Earth from so many places with names that are meaningless to us.
Right. Okay, there's one more question in the Q&A, and then you could wrap up and give some final words. Are there some people who can't be regressed? And talk a little bit about the whole process of bringing people back to that awareness in general, the IP. Yeah.
Okay, good. That's a common question. And I'll be honest, and I want to put this, it sounds a little bit arrogant, and I don't mean it that way. I've been guiding regression, obviously, for a very long time. Most people don't understand, so what is regression and what is hypnosis? And I would hazard to say that all of us are capable of tapping into our intuition, sometimes on our own, but in the case of regression, with someone who's trained and experienced in regression work, my experience with clients is maybe 1% of the time do I have a client that is unable to access intuitive material. It's understanding, how does your intuition work? How does it come forward? It's very uncommon to not be able to be regressed, but there's lots of fears and old wives' tales out there about hypnosis and regression that doesn't achieve anything.
You're practiced enough in 40 years to work with people at different levels. And so to wrap up, you want to undo your screen share?
Yeah, I'm just going to share. I just pop up this last. So I'll say something very briefly. I forgot. This is an important slide. Let me just quickly comment. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, this is important. So there are coordinating councils of evolved souls. These are the higher selves of souls. There is an Earth Council that works to coordinate Earth. There is an Interplanetary Council. So let me just comment about what I call the IP Council. There is an Interplanetary Council of approximately in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 souls. Its intention is to come together, and just let me be sure this is clear. These are the higher selves of advanced souls that are coming together to work to advance humanity. There are representatives from Earth, and there are representatives from a number of celestial locations within our solar system. Do they always have consensus? And say a couple more things, and I teach about these things, and people can go look at my website. But I know, because I often experience some of the intuitive download, my soul has some connection to the IP Council. The IP Council sometimes gets into extreme lack of consensus, meaning these 5 souls say, Earth is lost, humanity is lost. Look what's going on with what we might call unhealthy behavior that's not of the light. I don't think we should keep helping Earth, says maybe 5 souls on this IP Council. And perhaps 25 souls say, no, it is not time to give up on Earth. There is a coordinating soul. That the IP Council is coordinated by an advanced Earth-based soul. But the purpose of the IP Council, and there may be people listening, I wouldn't be surprised that whose higher selves are involved on the IP Council. You may have a night where you don't sleep very well. You may have a day where you have quite a bit of anxiety. That happens for me periodically. sometimes we're feeling the dissension in the higher realm. So I thought that was extremely important to understand, because it explains what we go through as humans at times.
No, that's
Okay.
good. But is this how we can get in touch with you here?
Yeah, so this is where you can find me. Here's my website. Obviously, I guide individual regression almost totally remotely at this point. So
Right.
it doesn't matter where you live. I do remote work. You can find me on my website.
ravensheartcenter.com out of Colorado, although you can be anywhere now. But you also do classes, you do trainings, you do whole 6 week courses. I think you were giving a 6-week course.
I'm currently teaching a 4-month course.
4-month.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great. And you're going to stick around for the panel, right?
Absolutely.
So I'd love to hear you dialogue with Marina about all this, and everyone else there. Well, Linda, thank you.
It's been my pleasure.
It's another great addition to this day that is so multifaceted, but focused on the same kind of theme of who we really are as soul incarnate beings. So thank you for your 40 years of work.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
I wanted you to be in this community when I had met you a couple of years ago, and I think it's great. And
thank you.
Shield is a great resource. So thank you. We'll see you in about an hour then for the panel.
Sounds perfect.
Thanks. And